Every year at this time, what the ministers call the Sermon on the Amount rolls around. Ministers often hate doing it, but the fact is we're best prepared to talk about money because everyone in the congregation knows how much we make. And if you don't, ask a board member. And if you don't, shame on you. It's good to know how your community is spending its money, or rather, going back to congregational polity, how you're spending your money. There are no secrets here. Back in my youth, when I was finding my way to seminary, and it took me about 10 years to give in to that call, I did an 8-year stint in a money management firm. I started out as secretary to the president and grew into the office manager position. When I think back on that time, I'm amazed, both that I did it, that someone trusted me to do that, and at what I learned. It's so far from my world today, and yet bits and pieces remain. My boss was an outstanding investor. In bull markets, he wildly outperformed, and in bear markets, he did about average. Over the long term, I'm still not sure why. She couldn't understand that I was still strongly ahead of where I would have been if my money had been in a bank or a mutual fund. She also couldn't understand that it was only money, and I would soon spend the rest of it going to seminary, and that nobody in that world thought that that was a worthwhile investment of money. And speaking financially, it probably wasn't. But what's it worth to do what you love? Al's colleague, Al was my boss, gave him a trophy one day with the words, "World's largest owner of single-digit stocks." They were good managers. Al was extraordinary. And it grated a bit. Al didn't read much about stocks. Instead, he went to industry lunches and listened to people talk. When he found someone with the passion to go with a pretty sound business plan, he went for it. Others wanted more assurance and bought more blue chip stocks, and they performed right down the middle of the road. For some reason, I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought, wow, the UUCSV is pretty close to a single-digit stock. In the great UUA stock market, we're not necessarily a good bet. We're small, we're rural, we're somewhat isolated from the herd. The Mother Church is not known to invest deeply in congregations such as ours because they find it unlikely that we'll either change the world or reflect loudly and positively on the UUA. But who is it that's on Jane Fonda's website? Is that us? Just saying. So we're not the best league players, perhaps, although I'll defend our ability as team players loudly. Some things that work in large urban areas are not going to work in rural river valleys, and we're unlikely to have close UU neighbors to join forces with. So we have to play in the local Interfaith League. Can you believe I'm using both money metaphors and sports metaphors in the same sermon? Money I couldn't get away from, but so darn, we have to make a difference where we live, and we have to do it by things like going to Knoebels, making hummus, supporting other faith traditions, and feeding people. It looks like we may need to teach them sex education along with some other folks. Who knows what else we may need to do, and will accomplish doing. I find the UUA's perspective a little short-sighted after all. One of the things that's true about little churches is that you don't know who's going to show up in the pews and what one of us will happen to be expert at or enthusiastic about, and who will either know or be related to. It makes our world and our reach bigger than they think. And when we begin to make a difference in our valley, that begins to ripple out into the world. We're very lucky here. Among other things, we have among our membership people who think creatively about money and in a big way. Because of that, we've done things that people would assure you cannot be done. Social concerns, love flows, gift cards, founders' funds, yard sales. As my niece was at one time prone to tell you, let us say to the world, nanny, nanny, poo-poo. But communities need more than wildly creative money people. It needs the rest of us plodding along, making a difference. And here we are in the middle of our pledge campaign, and I wanted to talk about whether we might not all think a bit about picking up our pace, even just a bit, from a plod. Because I think about all the amazing things we don't yet know are possible. We moved to this place about 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So 8 years ago. 8 years ago. We're only going to be here a year, folks. Don't think about it. Are we living down the way in a large building? I don't think so. We're living here. 8. Wow. No, it can't be 10. I'm not buying 10.
Been married 11 years. 8 years before I got married.
Okay, here? No, here in this place. You were here in this place? Okay. Why didn't I marry you? Okay, all right. You can do it again. All righty, so we moved here a long time ago. We were an odd combination of hopeful and pretty dispirited. We were paying out money at a fast clip and had little hope that we might see that trend reverse. We just bought land, and while some people were dreaming of fountains where we might have our own sound and light show, others were thinking we're never going to be able to afford toilets. Because it would cost so much just to get the land set up to build on. It made for a rather crazed community full of Tiggers and Eeyores. And while I'm thinking about who we're full of, I've been talking to people the other day and trying to figure out how many of us here think of ourselves as extroverts and how many introverts. Can I have a show of hands, people who think of themselves as introverts? Okay, extroverts. All right, let me say to the introverts among you that your job, we always need tenors, we need people who have good kitchen stuff they need to get rid of for the yard sale. We need some more extroverts. Right? No wonder, right. We embarked tentatively on a journey to build our investment in the community and to increase our resources, and so we did. We've got a Sunday school population that far larger churches envy, a consistently growing community, and the beginning of an endowment. Well played, UUCSV. We could probably keep going, raising good kids and doing consistently good deeds. Or we could dream a bit more grandly and work to ensure a secure home for liberal religion in this valley and become an increasingly louder voice for hope, peace, and possibility. We could work at becoming more visible, at being that thing on our kids' resumes that makes admissions programs sit up and take notice because our kids are being leaders in solving problems in our valley, and because they will go on to solve problems in the world, and perhaps remaining fiercely loyal to our tradition, so that they too can learn to play volleyball with congregational polity. They will care because we have cared and given them permission to care and to make a difference. We can keep investing our time, talents, and treasures here so that we will learn more about our little community and our wider community. It is so important that we are not simply friends with those who look like us and think like us. As a community, we can extend those boundaries so that we can get to know one another. As with many of you, I've been stunned by the evidence of hatred that has been on display in the last couple weeks. The senators' disregard for their country as a whole and the ignorance of their governance, the band of fraternity brothers being defended by their parents as non-racist, despite singing songs about lynching. They're good boys. If that's what passes for good children in our world, we need help. I think small communities can be that help. I think we train our children in justice and generosity and train them to intervene in ugly situations. We can look to we can do it for ourselves as well. I think we can look around and see who doesn't have a place or a voice and say, welcome home. I think we can see where there is need and respond generously. Are we training ourselves to do this? Are we saying to our children, this is how much we pledge to our community because we believe in it? That we're going to help you do the same because it's important. I realized a while ago that I could tithe and still live. It means life is uncomfortable some months. There are months those few $100s could be helpful in fulfilling the next whim or making me feel more stable. But when I compare my having a bit more to the ability of kids to eat lunch, on the weekends the choice changes. Some people think it's silly for the minister to pledge. But I don't just believe in my ministry. I believe in Sarah. I believe in all the volunteers. I believe in the discretionary fund and the RGL classes and the things we're doing together. I believe in our vision. I'm investing in you, and you are all so worth it. I laughed when I got the packet about pledging. I pretty much decided that I needed to stand firm where I was. And then, as Scott had it all laid out for us, I realized that for just $15 more a month, I could be pulling a different kind of weight, not just in time and talent, but also in treasure. As I said, at my salary, sometimes that weight feels heavy, but I believe we're worth it. I increased my pledge by $15. Can you? I can only invest my time and talents in the Founders Fund. I'm hoping some of you with larger amounts of discretionary income can invest more. A few more dollars a month from a lot of us mounts up. If you can do a bunch, great. The steadier we are financially, the better able we are to make a difference. If I think on my earlier metaphor of the UUCSV as a well-performing, impassioned, single-digit stock, if we're clever, there's a lot more room for all of us to grow higher, wider, deeper. We can be those who change our lives and our Valley's lives. We can do it by investing in our community. What do you think? Is our community worthy of such an investment? Are our children? Are you? You know, I heard somebody last night, Steve and I were out for dinner, and there was a guy behind us, and he was talking about, it later turned out, the founding of this, of the country. And he talked about the founding fathers, and actually I think it must have been the Congress that formed the country and pulled away. And they pledged their sacred honor. And I thought, wow, do I ever consider that I have sacred honor? You know, is it something that's in my purse that I rummage by? I mean, and do I think of that being on the line all the time? I'm not sure that's a metaphor I use. And I think, well, what do I lose when I don't think of myself as having sacred honor? And it's different than having, as it was for all of them. It's not that we have a creed to which our sacred honor is dedicated, but we have participation in a community. And how much of us do we invest in that? You'll probably hear more from me about that, because I'm going to have to consider. I hear the parents of the kids in that Oklahoma fraternity defending indefensible behavior and saying, nope, we don't want to be those people. Nope, nope, nope. We want to build a world where people understand that everyone has worth and dignity. This little church is mighty enough to start that revolution. But we all have to think it's a worthwhile mission. Not think, believe. We have to think it's worth investing in. Thank you, really, thank you for what you're giving. Not only for the difference it makes in my life, but for the difference I believe we are making in this wider valley, and in our kids, and in ourselves. And having said thank you, I also want to say, can you give more? That's not ingratitude. That's hope and faith in the vision. We cannot stand here and promise that you'll get it back in the afterlife. We don't have that to give. And we don't think about it. But we can stand here and promise that you'll get it back in this life, in the joy of belonging and in the sense of purpose engendered by the work that lies ahead of us. It's our call. It's our community. Give early. Give often. Give generously. Blessed be.